I didn't scream when the shredder gave its last whir and fell silent. The sound lingered anyway, echoing in my bones. On the floor were curled ribbons of paper, my passport, my photo. The visa I had waited 6 months to receive, all of it reduced to confetti. Alina brushed her hands together as though she had just finished dusting the shelves, then laughed at her own clever cruelty. Roaches don't deserve wings, she said, never even looking at me. Travis leaned against the doorway, arms folded. His voice was calm, almost weary. Your place is with your family, Mom. Not running off at your age, at my age. As if 68 meant I was supposed to stop wanting, stop dreaming, stop living. I bent down, picked up a shred of paper, and found my name split in two. Leo on one strip, NA on another. I didn't shout, I didn't cry. I just let the silence stretch until it pressed against them. I'm going to bed, I said evenly. Someone has to make Camden's lunch tomorrow. I assume that's still me. Neither answered as I walked down the hallway past the family portrait. Alina and Travis with Camden in the center. Even the dog posed proudly. Me, off to the side like a visiting cousin. My room was the laundry closet. A cot pushed against the wall. Shelves shoved upward to make space. They had called it temporary when I sold my house 2 years earlier. Travis said the market was about to turn. That he and Alina were stretched thin with the new mortgage. He promised space in their home until things stabilized. I believed him, but the guest room went to Alina for her yoga flows, which mostly meant filtered reels and spritz. My room was the closet. I told myself this was what mothers did, adjust, endure. I had raised Travis through food stamps and coffee for dinner nights. I thought I could handle anything. I cooked, cleaned, ironed his shirts, picked up Camden, folded towels. I became a shadow in their household, invisible except when useful. But even shadows keep secrets. Last summer, I printed a Paris itinerary on the library computer. Monet's garden had called to me for years. At dinner, I mentioned it. Alina laughed, brittle and sharp. Dream smaller, Leona, or at least more age-appropriate. You'll twist an ankle on cobblestones. Travis chuckled too. I smiled faintly, pretending not to notice how even Camden looked uncertain whether he was supposed to laugh. That night, I tucked the folded itinerary inside my journal, letting the dream hibernate until the right moment. Now, I sat on my cot, hands trembling, not from fear but from fury, and from clarity. They thought shredding that passport was the end. They didn't know it was only one layer of a plan I had been building for years. Beneath the cot lay my faded journal. Inside, tucked between pages, was a small envelope containing another passport. Canadian. I had applied for it 3 years earlier. Quietly, after Alina had once screamed at me, "You live here, you don't go anywhere." My late husband Henry was born in Montreal, which meant citizenship by descent was possible. It took paperwork, notarized forms, even a call to his distant cousin. But it was mine, my name, my bloodline, my exit. Alongside it lay the visa, flight confirmation for 8212 AM, seat 1 for A, and neatly stacked documents I had prepared with care. "You shredded the wrong dream," I whispered. Every time they mocked me, I added to the plan. Every time they told me I was lucky, I studied what real luck looked like. I documented everything: banking, embassy contacts, backup insurance. They thought I stayed because I had nowhere else to go. The truth was, I stayed because it gave me time. It let me grow wings where they couldn't see. That night, I brushed my teeth as though it were any other evening. Then I opened the security app they had insisted on installing. Cameras covered the kitchen, the hallway, the living room, not for safety but for control. I replayed the footage from just an hour earlier. Alina laughing as she fed my passport into the shredder. Travis saying softly, "Your place is with your family." Both of them celebrating my clipped wings. I downloaded the video and uploaded it to my old YouTube account. Scheduled to go live at 8:15 AM, just after my flight departed. The caption read, "They said I didn't deserve wings." I disagreed. I sat in silence for hours, steady and still. They mistook silence for surrender. But silence can be a seed waiting for the right soil. When I finally wheeled my suitcase to the door at 12:19 AM, Alina appeared, lips pursed. "Going somewhere?" she asked. Travis stumbled out, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, your passport is gone. You're not going anywhere." I set my suitcase down, reached into my coat, and pulled out the navy blue booklet. The gold lettering caught the light. Alina's smile cracked. Travis paled. "You shredded the wrong one," I said. The silence in the hallway pressed heavier than their words. Travis's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Alina stepped closer, her voice pitched high and sharp. That's fraud. You can't just. I met her eyes. Steady, it's legal. Verified. Already stamped. She faltered, realizing this wasn't a bluff. Travis finally found his voice. Louder now, desperate. You think you can just walk out of here after everything we've done for you? I tilted my head, asking softly, and what exactly have you done for me? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He knew the truth as well as I did. A closet for rent, childcare for free, meals prepared, laundry folded, shirts ironed, dignity stripped. Sacrifice had been recast as servitude. Alina hissed, I told you this would happen. She's been planning it. I smiled faintly. Of course I have. Planning is the only way to leave people who mistake control for care. Travis jabbed a finger at the suitcase. You walk out now, and we're done. No support, no family, nothing. His words landed like a threat meant to break me. But all I heard was confirmation. You say that like I've been getting something. I replied. His face flinched as though struck, then the soft sound of bare feet on stairs. Camden appeared at the landing, small hands gripping the banister, eyes wide beneath tousled hair. Spider-Man pajamas sagged at his ankles. He said nothing, only stared. Confusion etched across his young face. My anger softened. I set the suitcase aside, knelt until our eyes met. Hey sweetheart, remember the gardens I told you about Monet's? He nodded hesitantly. Will you send pictures every week? His voice was so quiet, it nearly broke me. I smiled through the ache. Every week, tell your teacher, Grandma finally made it to Paris. He gave the faintest nod. And I rose. Alina's smirk was gone. Travis looked like a man realizing the house he'd built rested on sand. They didn't move, didn't block the door. They knew I wasn't bluffing. My phone buzzed with a message. We're here in the driveway, Amy. My old friend, waiting to drive me away. I reached for the handle of my suitcase and stepped past them, each breath steadier than the last. Paris air felt different, maybe cleaner, maybe lighter, or maybe it was just the first breath I'd taken in years that didn't taste of sacrifice. Marisol was waiting beyond customs, a small bouquet in hand, eyes wet with relief. We embraced, wordless until she whispered, You made it. For the first time in a long time, I answered honestly. Asterisk letters still poured in, but now they came with stories of change, of women moving out, filing for independence, even simply daring to say no to demands that once silenced them. I found myself smiling more often. My reflection in cafe windows looked softer, less strained, less like the ghost who had folded towels in Alina's house. Freedom had begun to etch itself onto my face, replacing the lines that carried my scuffed suitcase everywhere, the same one that had once sat by the cot in the laundry closet. It wasn't pretty anymore, but it was strong. That suitcase had taken me farther than anyone believed I could go. Then, one quiet afternoon, an email arrived again from Alina. This time the subject line simply said, her sponsorship's gone. Travis under review at his firm, Camden embarrassed at school. For the first time, she sounded less like a woman defending her pride and more like someone clinging to a ledge. She begged me to take the video down, to erase the blog posts, to stop feeding the fire. She even wrote, we can start over, come back, we'll make it right this time. In fact, not from temptation, but from recognition. This was the same voice that had once convinced me to sell my home. The same promises of temporary solutions, the same manipulations wrapped in softness. Only now, I wasn't the same woman who believed them. I closed the email without replying. I didn't care. It was strength. That evening, Marisol and I walked along the Tagus River. The water glowed with sunset, gold spilling across the horizon. I told her about the email. She listened quietly, then slipped her hand through mine. You don't owe them your return, she said. You don't owe them your silence either. I breathed deeply, letting the words settle inside me like anchor and sail at once. Travel became my way of reclaiming time. 12 stamps in my passport, 12 borders crossed. In each new place, I left behind another layer of the woman they tried to reduce. In Barcelona, I danced clumsily at a street festival. In Vienna, I lost myself in a museum, before Klimt's golden canvases. In Rome, I ate gelato at midnight, sticky fingers and laughter with strangers I'd just met. Each act felt small, yet each was a rebellion against the years I'd been told to shrink. But freedom didn't erase memory. Sometimes I dreamed of the hallway portrait, of my faded smile in the corner, of Camden's wide eyes as he clutched the banister. I carried him with me in every step, hoping he would remember that I hadn't abandoned him, only the prison they had built. I sent postcards whenever I could, gardens, rivers, bridges, with short notes only for him. This one reminded me of your drawings. The pigeons here are bolder than superheroes. One day, you'll see this too. As spring melted into summer, my story had taken on a life of its own. News outlets quoted parts of my blog, women's groups invited me to speak virtually, and strangers recognized me in cafes. I was careful never to let it feel like revenge. This wasn't about punishing Travis or Alina. It was about proving to myself and to anyone listening you could step out of the shadows and claim the sky. On my last morning in Lisbon, I packed slowly, tucking my journal on top of folded clothes. Its pages bulged now with letters, notes, scribbles from workshops, even scraps of poetry that arrived in moments of stillness. It had become the map of a new life, one I had drawn myself. My flight to Prague was another room full of women waiting to share their stories. I felt nervous, as I always did before speaking, but I had learned something important. Fear wasn't proof of weakness. It was proof you were living outside the walls others built for you. As I zipped the suitcase shut and set it upright, I looked at its worn handle and peeling stickers. It wasn't beautiful anymore. It was stronger than it looked. Strong enough to keep going. Strong enough to carry me wherever I chose next. The plane touched down in Prague just as dawn brushed the horizon in pale gold. I had barely slept, nerves buzzing in my veins. My workshop was scheduled for the afternoon. A modest gathering of women from different countries, each carrying her own version of silence, in the hotel mirror. I barely recognized myself, the lines of fatigue still there, but softened by something stronger than rest. Resolve. The room was small but full, a circle of chairs instead of rows. I began hesitantly telling them about the closet by the washer, about the shredded passport, about how my silence as I spoke. The words stopped trembling. They became solid, steady. I told them how each mockery, each dismissal, became fuel for my plan. I told them how escape wasn't just boarding a plane. It was reclaiming the belief that my life still belonged to me. Faces around the room shifted, some nodding, some shining with tears. I've been invisible in my own home for 30 years, another said softly. I thought it was too late for me. By the end, the silence in the room wasn't heavy anymore. It was full of breath, of possibility. When they applauded, I felt it ripple through me. It wasn't the sound of praise, it was the sound of recognition. That evening, I walked alone through the old streets. Cobblestones uneven beneath my shoes. The city glowed with lantern light, couples lingering on bridges, music drifting from an open square. I paused by the river, leaning against the railing as I had done months earlier in Paris. The same truth returned, deeper now, often painful, sometimes terrifying, always worth it. Back in the hotel, I opened my laptop to another flood of messages. Among them was one from a reader who had been following my journey since the first blog post she wrote. I left my husband yesterday after 35 years. Your words gave me courage. I sat staring at that sentence until my eyes blurred. I thought again of Camden, the boy who had asked me, barefoot and frightened, if I would send pictures every week. I kept my promise. I hoped one day he would piece it together, not as a betrayal, but as a sign. I really did. That night, we walked along the Seine, arm in arm, the Eiffel Tower flickering to life, the river shimmered beneath the lights. And the ache that had lived in my chest since Henry's death loosened. My phone buzzed again. This time, I checked. The video had gone live. In 6 hours, it had gathered more than 300,000 views. Comments poured in, outrage, disbelief, solidarity. Screenshots of Alina's smirk had become memes. Her line, "Roaches don't deserve wings," was being quoted with disgust. People wrote, "This woman has been everyone's mother or grandmother at some point. We see you." Alina's Instagram had already gone private. Brands distanced themselves from her yoga lifestyle. Travis's accounting firm had been tagged in posts accusing him of helping clients hide personal expenses as business costs. Their carefully polished facade was crumbling under the weight of their own actions. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vengeful. I just felt free. At a cafe near the bridge, I ordered croissants and espresso, snapped a photo with the Eiffel Tower blurred in the background, and typed the caption, "Roaches don't deserve wings. Good thing I'm not one." I posted it and leaned back as Marisol draped her scarf across my shoulders. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel small. In the days that followed, I told myself peace meant walking away, keeping quiet. But one afternoon in Montmartre, sipping coffee at a cafe table while watching strangers greet each other with warmth, I realized silence had never given me peace. Silence had kept me invisible. Marisol slid a notebook toward me. "Start small," she said. "Write it down. Not for them. For you too, so I wrote a blog post titled How I Earned My Flight: One Closet, One Passport, One Lie at a Time. I wrote about the cot beside the washer, the Paris itinerary folded away, the indignities suffered in silence. I wrote about the cost of shrinking and the freedom of stepping into the light. It wasn't bitter, not angry, just truth. By the next morning, it had been shared more than 6,000 times. Letters began arriving from strangers, teachers, nurses, single grandmothers who said they had lived the same invisibility, the same quiet erasure. My story was their story. And that, more than any viral video, made me feel seen. Then the email arrived from Alina. Subject: take it down. The body read: you've ruined us. My reputation is destroyed. Travis lost 2 clients. Camden's being questioned at school. This is malicious. We gave you a home. This is how you repay us. I stared at her words for a long time. Then I attached a photo I had taken that morning of the Eiffel Tower rising behind a budding tree, the sky soft with spring light. My reply was one sentence: you did that yourself. I just stopped covering for you. I closed the laptop slowly after sending that reply, letting the weight of it settle. No anger. No shouting. Just truth. The kind of truth that didn't need volume to echo. Outside my balcony, church bells rang faintly across the Paris rooftops, and a man down the street sang off-key but full of joy. I leaned against the railing, feeling the foreign air on my face, realizing that for the first time in years, I was breathing without permission. The blog post that had started as a small release had grown bigger than I expected. Within days, messages poured in from women around the world. Retired teachers, widowed grandmothers, single mothers. They all said some version of the same thing: I know what it feels like to disappear inside your own family. One woman wrote, I've been sleeping in my daughter's basement for 5 years. She confessed that she printed my post and kept it under her pillow as if proof that she wasn't alone. Then came the unexpected invitation. A small wellness company, still here, reached out. They offered me a monthly column. It wasn't much, just a modest paycheck and a digital space. But it was mine. A place for my words, for my voice, for the self they had tried writing became the thing that kept me steady. It gave shape to the anger I refused to carry and the hope I refused to lose. Weeks passed, and the story refused to fade. The video continued spreading. The blog drew new readers, and slowly, I began to see myself not just as a woman who escaped, but as a woman who had something to offer. For the first time, I was someone's mother, someone's burden, someone's shadow. I was just Leona, a woman who had chosen to live, but my past wasn't finished trying to claw me back. Another email arrived from Alina weeks later, longer this time, frantic. She wrote about the cruelty of strangers online, the brand deals that had evaporated, the neighbors who whispered. She insisted Camden was suffering, accused me of ruining his childhood. Her words dripped with blame, but behind them, I recognized fear, fear of losing the perfect image, fear of the world seeing what lay behind the glossy filters. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth was already out there, and I no longer owed her my silence. Instead, I closed my computer and walked with Marisol along the left bank, stopping to listen to a violinist play under a bridge. Each note carried farther than any email, farther than any accusation. I wasn't her scapegoat anymore. Months unfolded gently. I traveled with Marisol, sometimes alone, collecting stamps on my Canadian passport like little trophies of freedom. Lisbon, Barcelona, Prague. My suitcase grew scuffed at the corners, stickers peeling, but every mark felt like proof. Proof that I had left. Proof that I had chosen myself. Proof that it wasn't too late at 68 to dream and to live in Prague. I spoke for the first time in public. Still, Here had asked me to lead a workshop about rebuilding after erasure. I stood at the front of a small room, knees trembling, voice shaky at first. But as I told the story of the closet, of the passport shredded and the one hidden, of the silence mistaken for surrender, I saw faces nodding. Some smiled with recognition, some cried quietly. But all of them listened. When I finished, the applause startled me, not because it was loud, but because it was real. Afterward, a woman approached, maybe in her 70s, with hair silver as mine. She pressed my hands between hers and whispered, "You said the words I never could." My throat closed with emotion, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. That was when I realized this wasn't just my story anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever been told that I was small, too dependent to matter. That night, back in my hotel room, I sat by the window with my journal on my lap. The same journal that once held my folded itinerary now held notes from the women I met, their stories scribbled in shaky handwriting. It had become something bigger than my escape. It was a record of survival, a collective map, and a balcony. I looked over the city lights of Prague. The streets hummed with life, laughter rising from cafes below. I thought of Camden, then his small voice asking if I would send pictures every week. And I had. Every city, every stop, a photo mailed or emailed. Proof that Grandma was still out there, still alive in ways they could never cage. I didn't know what Travis or Alina told him now, but I hoped that one day, when he was old enough, he would understand. I hadn't left him. I had left the people who tried to clip his grandmother's wings. As I zipped my bag for the next flight, I realized something simple yet profound. My story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about exposing them. Though that had happened, it was about reclaiming my right to exist. Loudly and visibly, in a world that had tried to make me invisible. I didn't just escape a closet. I stepped back into my own skin. Lisbon was where it truly sank in. I was no longer running. I was living. The city welcomed me with tiled streets, sea air, and pastries so sweet they almost felt like a secret. I spent mornings in cafes tucked between narrow alleys, afternoons wandering along the waterfront, and evenings writing until the lamplight blurred. My column for Still Here had grown into something steady, a rhythm of truth-telling that readers seemed to crave.